Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Okay, so today we've got a mountain of sources, videos, news, some educational stuff.
All about climate change.
Exactly. It's going to be wild seeing how all these different pieces fit together.
It's more than just the science this time.
Oh, yeah.
We're going deep into human stories, the economics, even how some solutions backfire. It's fascinating.
Speaking of backfiring, did you see those crazy images of Florida's ocean temperatures?
Literally off the charts, right?
Makes you wonder what happens to coastal communities long term. Like, how do we even prepare for this kind of heat becoming normal?
Well, one scientist from the Woodwell Climate Research Center, they were saying some areas are getting so hot, it's beyond what humans can even live in.
Oh, way.
It's scary to think about. And it's not like some distant future thing either. It's happening right now.
I mean, we've got like 112 million Americans under heat alerts.
And Death Valley might even break global temperature records.
Huge warning signs for sure.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just discomfort, too.
Like with that Amazon driver strike.
Exactly. Imagine doing 400 deliveries a day when it's 135 degrees inside your truck.
They said it felt like an oven.
And what does Amazon do? Offers them 2 bottles of water a day.
Wow, that's something. Makes you think about how corporations are going to handle this.
It's a huge question, right? How do we protect workers when just doing your job becomes dangerous because of the heat?
Speaking of things we don't often think about, this deep dive uncovered something about the military
Yeah,
and climate change.
seriously.
We always hear about companies, individuals, but what about the military's impact?
It's like the elephant in the room. No one wants to talk about it.
Well, this David Vine guy, he's saying the U.S. military is a big carbon emitter.
But no one really knows how much.
Right. The UN reports often leave out military emissions, and a lot of militaries don't even have to tell anyone their numbers.
It's crazy. Like, world leaders are saying climate change is a national security threat.
But then they ignore the military's part in it.
Totally. There was even that clip of Abby Martin, confronting Nancy Pelosi about it at that big climate conference, COP26.
And the military emissions weren't even on the agenda. It's like, what are we even doing?
Well, the U.S. military says they have a plan to cut emissions, go net zero, all that.
But then there's also this push for more military spending, right?
Yeah, so it makes you wonder how serious they actually are about the climate stuff.
And didn't Code Pink have that campaign?
War is not green.
Yeah, that one. It's like a reminder that even ending one war could be huge for the environment.
They were saying something about tons of dolphins dying in the Black Sea because of the Ukraine war, right?
Exactly. It really makes you see how everything's connected.
For sure.
So let's switch gears for a sec. This deep dive had some really heavy stats about the economic and social side of climate change.
Yeah, it's not just about the planet warming up, is it?
Like last summer in Europe, the shitwave killed over 61,000 people.
That's insane.
But what's really scary is that a similar heat wave happened 20 years ago.
And it killed about the same number of people.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if all our efforts to adapt are even working.
Right, if we can't keep up with how fast things are changing, what's the point?
The stuff we read painted a pretty bleak picture, honestly. Like, if the world gets 3 degrees Celsius warmer,
Oh, man.
mass migrations, job losses, whole areas becoming unlivable.
Oh, we're already seeing that happening, aren't we?
Places like Dhaka, Bangladesh, yeah.
It's a reminder that this is serious stuff, and it's going to hit the people who are already struggling the hardest.
It's almost mind-blowing how even our solutions can have problems we didn't see coming.
Oh, totally.
Like electric vehicles. At first glance, they seem like the answer to cutting emissions.
But then you dig a little deeper.
And it gets complicated fast.
Batteries degrading, the fire risk, how heavy they are.
I was shocked to learn how much harder it is to put out an EV fire compared to a regular car fire.
You need way more water.
Like up to 30,000 liters?
It really shows how we have to think about the whole picture when we're talking about solutions, right?
Yeah, because what seems good at first might have downsides later.
Exactly.
And then there's the weight of EVs and how they damage the roads. One source compared a Tesla Model S to like 60,000 fat men on freakishly heavy bicycles. It's funny, but makes a point.
Makes sense. Heavier cars, more wear and tear on the roads.
And then you've got to fix the roads, which uses more resources.
And creates more emissions.
It's like this vicious cycle, so it makes you wonder, are EVs really the answer?
Or just a temporary fix. It's something to really think about.
But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. This deep dive also had some stories about People being resilient, finding new ways to do things.
Like real ingenuity out there.
Like those Changli EVs from China.
The tiny electric trucks.
Yeah, people are importing them and using them around their neighborhoods.
Even though they aren't street legal here.
It shows how people are getting creative, finding workarounds.
Like a DIY approach to dealing with climate change.
And on a smaller scale, there was that story about the flower farmer.
I think I saw that one.
She's using rainwater to water her garden to save water.
Simple, but effective.
Right. It's like finding ways to adapt with what you have.
And there was that cool video about growing San Pedro cactus cuttings sideways.
I saw that one too. They do that because that's how they naturally grow after strong winds knock them over.
It's fascinating how we can learn so much just by paying attention to how nature does things.
And speaking of nature, this deep dive really drove home how everything's connected. Even those weird ghost plants that steal nutrients from fungi.
Ghost plants.
They're kind of creepy looking, but they're part of this bigger ecosystem.
Right. The ghost plant, the fungi, the trees, they're all linked.
It's like this delicate balance.
Which is why it's even more worrying when you see news like that massive wildfire in Canada.
That thing was bigger than some countries.
And it shows how something happening in one place can have effects all over. American cities had weeks of smoke because of it.
And let's not forget the people who are risking their lives to fight those fires. We learned about one firefighter who died battling that blaze.
It's a stark reminder that this isn't just about abstract concepts. Climate change has real consequences for real people.
It's heavy stuff for sure. But the deep dive also showed how important it is to connect with other people, build community, especially when things are tough.
It's like that saying, we're all in this together.
Like that story about the musician, Moses Sumney. He moved to this creative community in Asheville, North Carolina. They're all about finding new ways to tell stories and creating a sense of belonging.
Sounds pretty cool.
It is. It's like a little beacon of hope amidst all the craziness. But then, on the flip side, there's the Congo and the cobalt mining there.
Oh, yeah.
That powers so much of our tech phones, electric cars, everything.
The dark side of our progress, isn't it?
And the human cost is devastating.
This Siddharth Kara guy, he talked about children working in dangerous conditions.
Just so we can have the latest gadgets.
It makes you think twice about what you buy.
Definitely. And the deep dive made this connection between colonialism, the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, and what's happening now with the cobalt mines. It's like this long history of exploitation that's still going on today.
It's a tough reality to face.
But hey, there were also some hopeful signs, like those compostable coffins and urns made out of mushrooms.
I saw those. It's a cool idea.
It's like, returning to the earth, even in death.
And nourishing new life.
And then there's that zero waste program in Nigeria.
Tell me more about that.
So basically, people are getting paid to recycle. It's like they're turning trash into cash.
That's awesome.
Right. It shows how we can solve these big problems with creative solutions.
I love that.
This deep dive really highlighted how important it is to learn about these issues.
Knowledge is power.
Right. Exactly. Like that YouTuber who uses spruce tips for medicine. It's about tapping into traditional knowledge and using nature in a sustainable way.
And she was really big on ethical wildcrafting, which is important. We can't just take from nature without thinking about the impact.
Right. We have to respect those delicate balances.
Absolutely. And then there was that fascinating story about the Indian pipe plant.
That one was wild.
Indigenous communities have used it for medicine for a long time.
It shows how much we can learn from traditional ecological knowledge. Wow, we've covered so much ground.
It's crazy, isn't it?
From heat waves to military emissions, cobalt mines, and even mushroom coffins, it's all connected somehow.
It really shows how complex the world is and how everything is intertwined.
It's mind-blowing, really. But now that we've taken this deep dive, the question is, what can we actually do with all this information?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
I mean, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, but then you see those stories like the ghost plants, which are actually a sign of a healthy forest. It's about understanding those connections and using that knowledge to make better choices.
Exactly. Like learning about ethical wildcrafting and traditional plant uses, that helps us approach nature with more respect.
And responsibility.
Right. It's about finding that balance. Like that quote about the children mining cobalt. It really stuck with me. How we can't tell if they're working for a colonial exploiter or a modern tech company.
It's a powerful image.
It makes you realize how these systems of exploitation are still in place, even if we don't see them.
So, knowing all of this, how do we make a difference?
It's easy to feel powerless, but then I think about those recyclers in Nigeria turning trash into cash. It shows that individual actions can have a real impact.
And that flower farmer using rainwater.
Exactly. It's about shifting our mindset, embracing a more circular way of living.
Moving away from the throwaway culture, being more conscious about what we buy and how we use resources.
And supporting companies that are doing things the right way. Ethical sourcing, sustainable practices, that kind of thing.
And don't forget about community. That story about Moses Sumney and his community in Asheville was so inspiring.
It's a reminder that we don't have to do this alone. Connecting with like-minded people, sharing knowledge, supporting each other, that makes a huge difference.
It's about collective responsibility, working together to build a better future.
And even though it's tough, it's important to remember that even small actions can contribute to that bigger movement for change.
It's about choosing hope over despair and being part of the solution.
Absolutely.
So what about those firefighters?
Battling those massive wildfires.
Yeah, it's incredible how they face that kind of danger, risking their lives to protect others and the planet.
It's truly inspiring.
And it reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there are people out there doing amazing things.
It's important to support them in any way we can, whether it's through donations, volunteering, or just raising awareness.
So how do we bridge the gap between awareness and action? How do we go from feeling overwhelmed to feeling empowered?
Well, I think it starts with taking small steps, like that quote from Obama about mitigating climate change. Even if we can't reach the ideal target, every bit of progress we make helps.
Every fraction of a degree, every resource we save, every act of kindness and compassion, it all adds up.
It's about focusing on what we can control and taking action in our own lives.
Yeah.
Even if it seems small, it can inspire others to do the same.
And all those small actions can create a ripple effect, leading to bigger changes down the line.
It's about realizing that we're all connected and that we have the power to shape the future we want to see.
It's about choosing to be part of the solution, one step at a time.
And remembering that we're not alone on this journey. There are countless people and organizations working towards a better tomorrow. We can find hope and inspiration in their stories, connect with those who share our values, and support each other along the way.
Even in the face of these huge challenges, there's always hope, and we can make a difference.
Absolutely. So what does all of this mean for you? What small change can you make in your own life?
Maybe it's cutting down on plastic, walking or biking more, supporting local businesses.
Or learning more about these issues, talking to people about them, advocating for change.
It doesn't have to be a huge thing. Just start somewhere. Take that first step.
And remember that even small actions can have a big impact.
So what will you choose? What kind of future will you help create? It's kind of crazy how much we've unpacked, right?
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
We went from those intense heat waves to the struggles of adapting. Even EVs turned out to be way more complicated than I thought.
Yeah, it really shows how everything's connected, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Like those Changli EVs, they're not even legal here, but people are still finding ways to use them.
It's like they're hacking the system to find climate solutions.
In a way, yeah. And speaking of adapting, we saw so many different approaches. That flower farmer using rainwater was inspiring.
Definitely. And then there's that whole thing with the San Pedro cactus and how it grows horizontally.
I love that. Nature's been figuring this stuff out for millions of years.
Right. Those cacti are tough. They can handle anything. Maybe we can learn a thing or two from them.
Absolutely. But then you have those massive wildfires like the one in Canada. It kind of puts things in perspective.
Yeah, nature can be beautiful and terrifying at the same time.
And the impact of that fire was huge. American cities had weeks of smoke because of it. It's a reminder that we're all connected, even if we don't always realize it.
And then hearing about that firefighter who died, it really hits home.
It's a reminder that climate change has real consequences, and people are putting their lives on the line to fight it.
It can feel pretty heavy sometimes. But then I think about those stories of community resilience, like Moses Sumney finding that creative space in Asheville. It gives me hope.
Yeah, community is so important, especially when things are tough. It's about finding those spaces where you feel supported and connected.
It's like finding your tribe. But then there's the other side of the coin, like what's happening in the Congo with the cobalt mining.
It's hard to think about, but we can't ignore it.
Those images of the children working in the mines, it's heartbreaking.
And the connection the deep dive made between colonialism and what's happening now is really disturbing. It's like history repeating itself.
It's a reminder that our choices as consumers have a real impact on people's lives, even if we don't see it directly.
Absolutely. But amidst all the darkness, there were some bright spots too.
Like those mushroom coffins, it's a pretty radical way to think about death.
But it's also beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Returning to the earth, nourishing new life.
It's like closing the loop. And then there's that zero waste program in Nigeria where people are getting paid to recycle. It's so innovative.
I love that. It's like they're turning a problem into an opportunity.
This deep dive really emphasized how knowledge can empower us.
Totally. Like that YouTuber using spruce tips for medicine. It's about tapping into that ancient wisdom and respecting nature's power.
And it's not just about taking, it's about using those resources sustainably. Like she said, ethical wildcrafting is key.
We have to find that balance, right?
Mm.
And that story about the Indian pipe plant and how indigenous communities have used it for medicine for generations is fascinating.
It's like they have this deep understanding of nature that we're only starting to rediscover. So after all of this, what do we do? I mean, it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
It is, but I think it starts with a shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on the enormity of the problem, we can focus on what we can control, our own actions.
Like that quote from Obama about climate change, even if we can't reach the ideal goal, every bit of progress counts.
Exactly. Every little thing we do, every choice we make, it all adds up.
So it's about taking action, even if it seems small.
And inspiring others to do the same. Because when we all act together, we can create real change.
So the big question is, are we willing to do that? Are we willing to make those changes in our lives, even if it's uncomfortable?
That's the challenge we all face, isn't it? The future is in our hands.
This deep dive has been a wild ride, hasn't it? We've explored the good, the bad, and the ugly, but ultimately I think it's a message of hope.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we're not alone in this. There are people all over the world working towards a better future, and we can join them.
So what will you choose? Will you be part of the solution?
The choice is yours. What kind of world do you want to create?
It's amazing how much ground we covered, right?
I know, right? We started with those crazy heat waves and ended up talking about mushroom coffins.
And everything in between. It's like all these different threads are woven together, even if it doesn't seem like it at first.
Exactly. That's what I love about these deep dives. You start digging into one thing, and suddenly you're uncovering all these hidden connections. It really shows you how complex the world is.
And how our actions have consequences that we might not even realize. Like with those cobalt mines, it's a harsh reality to face, but it's important to understand the impact our choices have.
Absolutely. We can't just turn a blind eye to the things that make us uncomfortable. It's about being aware and making informed choices.
And even though we saw some pretty dark stuff, there were those moments of hope too, like those communities coming together to support each other and those innovative solutions people are coming up with.
Those stories are what keep me going, honestly. It's like a reminder that even in the face of all this chaos, there's still so much good in the world.
Like that quote from Patrice Lumumba, "The future of the Congo is beautiful, and we shall show the world what a truly free and independent Africa can be." It's powerful, isn't it?
It really is. It speaks to the potential for change, the possibility of a better future. And it brings us back to that final question, adapting to change itself.
Right. It's not just about adapting to a changing climate. It's about adapting to the constant state of change that's happening all around us.
Think about those indigenous communities using the Indian pipe plant. They've been adapting to change for generations, passing down their knowledge and finding ways to thrive in a constantly evolving world.
It's like they have this innate wisdom about how to live in harmony with nature, even as things shift and change around them.
And that's something we can all learn from. It's about being flexible, open to new ideas, and willing to learn and grow as the world changes.
So it's like embracing the unknown instead of fearing it.
Exactly. And realizing that we don't have all the answers. We need to be humble, listen to different perspectives, and be willing to admit when we're wrong.
It's about letting go of that need to be right all the time and embracing the messy, beautiful complexity of life.
And remembering that even in the midst of all the chaos, there's still so much to be grateful for. There's beauty, there's hope, and there's always the possibility of something amazing happening.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, keep learning, and keep engaging with the world around you.
Don't be afraid to ask questions, challenge your assumptions, and have those tough conversations.
Because the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together through our choices and our actions.
So go out there and make a difference, even if it's just a small one, because every little bit counts.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep diving deep.